In this video, we're going to talk about the offering of first fruits. The first thing that you need to understand is that the only way for you to be able to observe God's Sabbaths and holy days correctly is for you to observe his new moon. His new moon is essential to understanding his holy days and his Sabbaths. The second thing that I want to explain to you is that in God's holy days, there are 2 season-specific holy days, and the rest of his holy days are date-specific. The season-specific holy days are the offering of first fruits and the festival of weeks. And because they are season-specific, they will not have a date associated with them. God did not provide a date associated with them. And there are many people who have ministries that argue with other ministries, false ministries, obviously, about what date is that the offering of first fruits and the festival of weeks are supposed to be on. Well, guess what? If God wanted you to have a date, he'd have given you a date. But on a 360 day, technically a God day, okay, I've explained that in other videos, technically a 354 24-hour day, lunar calendar, which is what God established, dates don't end up in the same season every year. Dates are going to make their rounds on the calendar, on the seasonal calendar. Therefore, season-specific holy days will not end up on a date every year on God's calendar. That's the reason he didn't give you a date for the festival of weeks or the offering of first fruits, and this is why he had you count down. However, if you understand the moon, because you've been observing new moon every month, you're going to know when these dates are. Even though they're not the same date every year, you're going to know. You're going to know that in that particular season, whatever month it be, based on the moon, that it's going to land on a particular day of whatever that month ended up being that year. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. But first we have to read. Leviticus 23, verse 9. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you and you reap its harvest, bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain you harvest." What is the first instruction? When you enter the land I'm going to give you and you reap its harvest. Okay, so we need to know when that was. And when that was begins in Joshua 3. Let's read the rest of the instructions first. When you enter the land I'm going to give you and you reap its harvest, bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain you harvest. He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord so it will be accepted on your behalf. Okay, so they're bringing an offering that's waved before the Lord to be accepted on your behalf. Because what has God established? There are acceptable offerings and unacceptable offerings, and you have to be accepted by that priest. Who is that priest? He is to wave the sheaf before the Lord so it will be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath. Okay, so a few instructions thus far. When you enter the land I'm going to give you and you reap its harvest, bring to the priest a sheaf of the first grain you harvest. And this is occurring the day after the Sabbath. It can't occur on the Sabbath because you're not going to be harvesting on the Sabbath. You're going to be doing this the day after the Sabbath. On the day you wave the sheaf, you must sacrifice as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb a year old without defect, together with its grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil, a food offering presented to the Lord, a pleasing aroma, and its drink offering of 1/4 of a hin of wine. Now, I want you to understand that I think a lot of people know this much, but if you don't, then you don't. The offering of first fruits talks about a harvest of grain. The festival of weeks also talks about a harvest of grain. The offering of first fruits is representing the barley harvest because the barley harvest comes before the wheat harvest. And we know that the offering of wheat or the festival of weeks refers to the wheat harvest. We know that from other places in Scripture, and we'll look at that when we talk about the festival of weeks. Right now we're talking about the offering of first fruits. Barley harvest comes before the wheat harvest. There are 2 barley harvests and there are 2 wheat harvests in a year, in spring and in autumn. I'm going to show you when we get to Joshua that we're talking about the spring harvest. This is referring to the spring harvest, not the autumn harvest. Remember, we're talking about season-specific holy days, and the season-specific holy day of the offering of first fruits is set in reference to what? When you entered the land that he gave you. Verse 14, you must not eat any bread. This is another instruction that you need to remember. And unfortunately, if you're just listening to this and you're not looking at scripture or you're not writing anything down, it's going to be kind of difficult for you to hold these details up in your head. So I do recommend that if you're unable to do that right now, listen to the video again at a later time when you can write down the notes. You can still listen to it, but it's going to be a lot easier if you're able to write these things down. So next instruction is, you must not eat any bread or roasted or new grain until the very day you bring this offering to your God. Okay, and it says this is to be a lasting ordinance for generations to come wherever you live. So no one should say that fulfillment means abolishment, especially because Jesus made it clear. So you must not eat any bread or roasted or new grain until the very day you bring this offering to your God. So this is occurring when they enter the land and they reap its harvest, the day after the Sabbath. This is when they would have been eating that new or roasted grain. They would not have eaten it any other day, because they had to bring the sheaf of the wave offering to the priest to be accepted on their behalf. It had to occur the day after the Sabbath. They could not eat any of the produce of the land until they did that. Now with these notes, we're going to go over to Joshua 3. Why Joshua 3? Because this offering of first fruits is set in reference to what? When they entered the land he gave them. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving the orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things for you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of Israel, so that they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. See, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, 1 from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who took the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. Do you recognize the miracle that he's performing? Same miracle that he performed when he parted the sea. The waters stood up in a heap, right? Now he's doing this as they're crossing the Jordan. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan, listen to the hint. The Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. So the Jordan is only at flood stage during the spring. That's how we know that this occurred during the spring this particular year. 2 harvests, but they're talking about a specific harvest that occurred during the spring that particular year. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zerathon, while the water flowing down to the Sea of the Arabah, that is the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. So we know the season we're in. Now we need to understand where in that season. You're not going to be able to say this is in the month of Aviv, because the month of Aviv is going to make its trip all throughout the seasons. But just because you can't say what month you're in, you can know what day you're in based on the moon. Because every single month, based on the moon, you should know what days you're supposed to observe your Sabbaths. Even if you don't know whether this is Aviv or Ziv or, any other month on God's calendar, 1 through 12. Just because you don't know what month you're in, you can always know what day you're in, based on that faithful witness in the sky. This is why I tell you, when you're determining whether or not this is in fact God's calendar, you need to go to him and you need a witness that you're in the month that I, for example, say that we're in. Chapter 4. When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight." So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, "Go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever." So the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and there they are to this day. Now the priests who carried the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua was done by the people, just as Moses had directed Joshua. The people hurried over, and as soon as all of them had crossed, the ark of the Lord and the priests came to the other side, while the people watched. The men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over, ready for battle, in front of the Israelites as Moses had directed them. About 40,000, armed for battle, crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for war. That day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him in all the days of his life, just as they had stood in awe of Moses. Okay, I'm going to move forward a little bit to Joshua 5. We've already established that they crossed the Jordan. This is what happened. It occurred when the Jordan was at flood stage, so we know that we're talking about the spring. Let's go to Joshua 5, verse 2. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." Okay, don't be confused about that. We're talking about he's circumcising the children of the Israelites who wouldn't enter the land because, remember, they were afraid. And so he made the children, he ended up killing all those who were of military age and older. And so it's the children of those people who are actually entering the land. And so now Joshua is circumcising them. Yes, you cannot be circumcised twice. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath Haraloth. Okay, little footnote here. Gibeath Haraloth means the hill of foreskins. Alrighty-o. Now this is why he did so. All those who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age, died in the wilderness on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness during the journey from Egypt had not. The Israelites had moved about in the wilderness 40 years until all the men were of military age when they left Egypt, that were of military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. Okay, that's what I just explained to you. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land he had solemnly promised their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place, and these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in camp until they were healed. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you, so the place has been called Gilgal to this day." And Gilgal sounds like the Hebrew for roll, is what the footnote says. On the evening of the 14th day of the month, while camped at Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. All right, well, what do you know about Passover? How many days is it? Is it an Easter Sunday? No. No Sunday in the Bible, no Easter in the Bible, unless you're reading King James because it's a prostitute. But if you look at the original word in this original King James Bible that was translated by the lying pen of the scribes, you will notice that the original word is pashal, Passover supper. I don't know why you'd translate that to Easter, but okay. Actually, I do. The Bible addresses it. He says, how can you say that we are wise with a lying, or that we have the law, when the lying pen of the scribes handles it wrong? Passover is 7 days. So when it says that the Israelites celebrated the Passover, they celebrated it for 7 days. The last day of Passover is a rest day or a work day? Rest day. A Sabbath. When are you to observe the offering of first fruits? The day after the Sabbath. Listen to what is said. The day after the Passover, the Sabbath, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. Now, what did they need to do before they ate the produce of the land? Before they ate any roasted or new grain? They needed to bring the sheaf of the wave offering. On what day? The day after the Sabbath. And what are the dates of Passover? The evening at twilight of the 14th day until the evening of the 21st. So, what day did the Israelites present the offering of first fruits? Well, you know that if they were eating the day after the Passover, that they presented the offering of first fruits the day after the Passover, the day after the Sabbath. So it says, the day after the Passover, that very day, they ate some of the produce of the land, unleavened bread and roasted grain. The manna stopped the day after they ate this food from the land. There was no longer any manna for the Israelites, but that year, they ate the produce of Canaan. How cool is that? God lined everything up. He gave them a holy day to observe. I mean, he told them, this is how you're going to observe this. How exhilarating is that? That God gave them this command. They're observing the command, and all of these things are conformed for them. What an amazing God. And he provided that manna right up to that point until they brought that offering. And guys, do you think that the Israelites, we already know that they were kind of sick of the manna because they complained about it, you know? So at that point, now they're eating the produce of the land. They're anxious to eat the produce of the land, but God gives them this command. You are not allowed to eat any of the produce of the land until you bring this sheaf of the wave offering. So what is God's heart there? I tell you, you want to understand Scripture? Pursue God's heart. What's his heart? He wants them to acknowledge him. Don't just take. Don't treat God like he's the sugar daddy that's there to, you know, give you whatever you want so you can go indulge your flesh. He wanted acknowledgement of all of the good things that he did for the Israelites. Same thing with us. That is the attitude. That's the heart with which we should be going to him always, but during this offering of first fruits. Now, what are the dates of Passover? The 14th to the 21st. So we know that on the 22nd of the month, the Israelites observed the very first offering of first fruits. How cool is that? Now, this is the 22nd. Did I say the 21st? I hope I didn't. 22nd of the month of Aviv in that particular year. But remember that in the month of Aviv, Passover is observed for 7 days, and on the first day you're holding a sacred assembly and observing a Sabbath. That starts on the 15th, okay? 15th is always going to be a Sabbath on God's calendar. But normally, a 7-day Sabbath is going to have 6 work days before it. But in this particular month of Aviv, God said, observe on the 15th a Sabbath, and also on the 21st, and there's only 5 work days in between. Normally, in a normal month, in every other month except for the month of Aviv, you're going to have the first, actually, I think the Festival of Weeks gets thrown off as well, that particular month. But we'll talk about it when we get there, okay? In a normal month, you would have first day of the month being new moon, rest day. We know that from Amos 8:5. So if that's a rest day, followed by 6 work days and then a rest day, then you're going to have Sabbaths on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th. So the only time that you're ever going to observe the offering of first fruits in the spring on the 22nd of the month is during the month of Aviv. If Aviv lands in the spring that year, then you will observe it on the 22nd. But if it doesn't, if you're in any other month that particular year, you're going to observe it on the 23rd. Why is that? Because the stipulation in Leviticus 23 is that you observe this on the day after the Sabbath. So if you're doing this, where you're going out and you're harvesting, you wouldn't be doing that on the 22nd, because in a normal month, the 22nd would be a Sabbath. You must wait until the 23rd. All right, that's a lot of information to absorb. I want to tell you when the offering of first fruits is this year, and you need to go and discern it. It is on the 23rd of March. Again, you need to go and discern it. When I say the 23rd of March, I'm talking about in the evening. So it begins in the evening. It will be from the evening of the 23rd to the evening of the 24th. That will be the offering of first fruits. Now, when we talk about the Festival of Weeks, there's going to be a certain countdown, because Festival of Weeks needs to be counted down from the offering of first fruits, and it needs to be done in a very specific way. You don't just count 50 days. That's not how God said it. And the reason he stated it as counting down weeks is because in God's 30-day month, you have days in between weeks. You have the first day of the month, which is a rest day, and the last day of the month, which is a work day. So you're actually not counting down 50 days, which is what a lot of people do. But we're going to hold that for the Festival of Weeks video. There's a lot to wrap your head around in this video. So please sit with it. Please sit with God and discern it and make sure that it's true. Again, if you're observing the moon and you're working the land, you're going to know that when you reach the 22nd in the month of Aviv or the 23rd in all the other months, you're going to know that that's your offering of first fruits. Is that cool or what? So God says that he refers to the moon in Psalm 89:37, I think it is, as the faithful witness in the sky. He's having a relationship with us through this calendar that he's created. And this is also why he says that observance of these things is going to be a sign between the two of you as to whether you're in the covenant. It's a lot of work, but it's also really exciting when you are observing it and you're able to understand certain things that he established. And how, for example, when he gives his command for Passover or for the Festival of Tabernacles, he stays on track with that 15th day, always being a Sabbath. But then he kind of mixes it up a little bit with the month of Passover, and I think it's the Festival of Weeks, if I remember correctly, but we'll talk about it in the next video. He kind of mixes it up a little bit, but I mean, it's a test to see, are you staying with him? Are you staying in rhythm with him and what he's doing? And then you're reset every single month by that new moon. We've been doing this for, my goodness, how long has it been now? I mean, I would say a couple years now. But actually, I might even be wrong about that, because I think it was about this time last year that God was revealing the calendar to me. So certain things, I mean, God builds one brick at a time, okay? So he will give you some information and then he's going to give you more information. And it's really like you do well with that, you observe it, you obey it, and he's going to give you more and more wisdom. And as long as you received it from him, you will not be deceived. So this is why I say to you after every video, you got to go discern it with him. Even if it's true what I'm saying, he'll hand you, he has his way of handing you over to deception. Please don't set me up that way. I'm here to trudge with you. I'm a fellow servant. I'm not the word of God. You need to go discern whether I'm a servant of God and test the message. Test my spirit. Test the message. Know the scriptures for yourself and go to God and ask him if I am actually serving him.